12 ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors, and zealots, walked alongside Jesus, carrying his message across distant lands. Handpicked by Christ for an extraordinary mission, these apostles followed him through miracles, teachings, and trials. But after his resurrection and ascension, their lives took a perilous turn. In a world ruled by the Roman Empire and hostile religious leaders, spreading the gospel was considered both treason and heresy. Still, with unwavering faith, they traveled far and wide, from Jerusalem to Rome, from India to Ethiopia, preaching a message of salvation that would change the world. One by one, they faced brutal ends, crucifixions, stonings, beheadings, exile, and execution. Peter, the rock of the church, was crucified upside down in Rome under Nero's persecution. His brother Andrew was tied to an X-shaped cross and preached until his final breath. James, the son of Zebedee, was the first to be martyred, beheaded by order of King Herod Agrippa. John, the beloved apostle, unlike the others, died in exile on Patmos after surviving persecution and became the voice of revelation. Philip was stoned or crucified for defying a Roman governor. Bartholomew, also known as Nathaniel, was flayed alive in Armenia. Thomas, once doubting, became a fearless missionary in India, where he was pierced by spears. Matthew, the former tax collector, brought the gospel to Ethiopia and Persia before being killed. James, the son of Alphaeus, was likely stoned in Jerusalem. Jude, also called Thaddeus, was martyred in Persia, while Simon the Zealot, once a political revolutionary, died for the faith he once sought to destroy. And then there was Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus and died in despair. Though their lives ended in suffering, their stories left an eternal impact. They lived and died during an age of empire, resistance, and awakening, a time when following Christ meant risking everything. Yet their sacrifices became the foundation of Christianity, echoing through cathedrals, whispered in underground churches, and remembered in the prayers of the faithful. Their legacy asks us a haunting question. In our own time of comfort and confusion, what are we willing to sacrifice for what we believe? The apostles took the message of Jesus as far as India and Ethiopia, boldly stepping into hostile lands, but their mission came at a heavy cost. Though they helped spread Christianity across the known world, their faith led many of them to brutal ends. One by one, they were hunted, tortured, and executed for proclaiming the name of Christ. Their stories, preserved in ancient manuscripts, church traditions, and historical records, still speak to us today. Let's begin with Simon Peter, the man Jesus called the Rock. As the leader of the apostles, Peter became a powerful preacher in Rome. But in 64 AD, after a devastating fire swept through the city, Emperor Nero needed someone to blame. He targeted Christians, sparking one of the first state-sponsored persecutions of the church. Peter was arrested and sentenced to death. Out of humility and deep devotion, he requested to be crucified upside down, believing himself unworthy to die in the same way as his Lord. His sacrifice became a lasting symbol of courage and spiritual leadership, and his influence as the foundation of the church still shapes Christianity today. Peter's brother Andrew carried the gospel northward to Greece, where he converted many to the faith. But like Peter, his success angered Roman authorities. Condemned to crucifixion, Andrew was bound to an X-shaped cross, refusing the honor of dying exactly like Jesus. For 2 agonizing days, he continued to preach from the cross until he died. His enduring legacy lives on, especially in Scotland, where his cross, the saltire, became the national symbol. James, the son of Zebedee and brother of John, was one of Jesus' most devoted followers. He was bold, passionate, and unwavering in his witness. Today, their stories remind us that living for something greater than ourselves often comes with a cost. Though we may not face physical persecution, the call to stand for truth, love radically, and live out our faith in a skeptical world still demands the same courage they showed. Their choices challenge us to ask, what are we willing to endure for the truth we say we believe? James, the son of Zebedee, was among the first to be called by Christ and stood as a prominent figure in Jesus' inner circle, witnessing sacred moments like the Transfiguration alongside Peter and John. After the resurrection, James fearlessly proclaimed the gospel in Jerusalem, despite rising hostility against the growing Christian movement. His bold faith soon made him a target. In 44 AD, King Herod Agrippa, eager to gain favor with the Jewish authorities, ordered James's arrest and execution, making him the first of the apostles to be martyred. According to early Christian tradition, the very man who had accused James before Herod was
so deeply moved by the apostles' unwavering faith that he converted to Christianity and chose to be executed alongside him. On the day of his death, James was led through the streets of Jerusalem by Roman guards, yet walked with fearless conviction. As the executioner raised his sword, James reportedly prayed for those around him. With one swift stroke, his head was taken, and with it, he sealed his faith in blood. But his story did not end in death. Centuries later, a tradition emerged that his remains were miraculously transported to Spain, where they now rest in Santiago de Compostela. Today, his legacy lives on through the Camino de Santiago, a famous pilgrimage walked by seekers from around the world, proof that his martyrdom marked not an end, but the beginning of a spiritual journey still alive in the hearts of millions. Meanwhile, John, the beloved disciple and brother of James, was the only apostle who stood at the foot of the cross during Jesus' crucifixion. To him, Jesus entrusted the care of his mother, Mary. After the resurrection, John became a central figure in the early church, preaching with courage and spreading Christ's message across the Roman Empire. His devotion, both tender and bold, left a lasting imprint on the foundation of the Christian faith. John, known as the beloved disciple, may have been the last apostle to die, but his journey was no less marked by suffering and divine purpose. Unlike the others, John's influence did not lead to immediate death, but it still provoked the wrath of Rome. Under the rule of Emperor Domitian, Christians endured intense persecution. John, now an elderly man, was arrested as authorities sought to silence the voice of one who had walked with Christ. Tradition tells us they even attempted to execute him by boiling him in oil, but he miraculously survived, an act that frightened his captors so much they exiled him instead to the desolate island of Patmos. Isolated and alone, John received a powerful series of visions that would become the Book of Revelation, a prophetic message for the early churches and a warning to future generations. His words, written in exile, echo even now through every age of suffering and hope. After Domitian's death, John returned to Ephesus, where he continued to teach and write until his peaceful passing around 98 AD. His longevity allowed him to shape the early church more deeply than perhaps any other apostle. Today, the ruins of the Basilica of St. John in Turkey stand as a powerful reminder of the man who bore witness to Christ's glory and faithfully passed it on. Philip, one of the earliest disciples, took the gospel to the pagan heartlands of Phrygia, modern-day Turkey, where his deep knowledge of Scripture and bold miracles won many converts. But his growing influence alarmed local Roman leaders and pagan priests. He was arrested in the city of Hierapolis and crucified upside down on an X-shaped cross, like Andrew before him. Even from the cross, Philip continued to proclaim the love of Christ to his persecutors, a scene of staggering courage that speaks to us today and a world that still resists inconvenient truth. His body was later buried in the very city where he died, and the ruins of Hierapolis still silently bear witness to his unwavering devotion. Then there was Bartholomew, also known as Nathanael, less prominent in the Gospels, but no less devoted. After the resurrection, he journeyed farther than many, taking the gospel to India, Mesopotamia, and Armenia. Though much of his story is hidden in the folds of history, the legacy of his obedience lives on in the faith communities that trace their roots back to his witness. In a world still hostile to truth, justice, and faith, these apostles remind us that spiritual endurance isn't confined to the past. Their suffering mirrors the quiet struggles of modern believers who continue to carry the gospel across cultures, languages, and generations, often at great personal cost. Bartholomew, also known as Nathanael, may have been one of the lesser-known apostles, but his impact was profound and enduring. After preaching in various regions, it was in Armenia that he left his greatest legacy, converting King Ptolemy and many of his subjects to Christianity. Yet, his success provoked a backlash. The pagan priests, angered by their diminishing influence, manipulated the king's brother into turning against Bartholomew. This led to one of the most gruesome martyrdoms in Christian history. Bartholomew was flayed alive, his skin torn from his body, before he was finally beheaded. Despite unimaginable agony, he never renounced his faith. His death became a timeless symbol of courage and devotion, and his relics, now housed in the Basilica of St. Bartholomew in Rome, continue to inspire countless believers. He is honored today as the patron saint of tanners, bookbinders, and all who suffer for truth, a reminder that standing for faith often comes at a price. Even now, Thomas, often remembered as Doubting Thomas, transformed from skeptic to fearless missionary, traveling farther than any of the other apostles. His mission led him to the distant shores of southern India, where he preached the gospel and established churches among people who had never heard the name of Christ. His growing influence drew the ire of local Brahmin priests, who viewed his message as a threat to their religious authority. While praying in a cave near modern-day Chennai, Thomas was struck down by a spear, an echo of the wound Christ himself endured. He died praying, unwavering in his faith. Today, his legacy lives on in the St. Thomas Christians of India, a thriving ancient community that traces its spiritual lineage back to the Apostles' mission. His tomb rests in the Santami Basilica in Chennai, a sacred monument to a life poured out for the gospel. Likewise, Matthew, once a despised tax collector, was radically transformed by Christ's call. After witnessing the resurrection, he dedicated his life to sharing Jesus' message, eventually authoring the Gospel of Matthew, one of the most influential books in human history. His journey led him to Ethiopia, where he preached to nobles and commoners alike. Many turned to Christ, including a local king, but this stirred up fierce resistance from the pagan religious leaders. Fearing their waning control, they persuaded the new ruler to execute Matthew. According to tradition, he was stabbed with a sword while leading a worship service guild for his faith in the very act of proclaiming it. These stories, though rooted in ancient times, speak to the heart of today's world, where spiritual conviction still collides with resistance, and where the courage to stand for truth can cost everything. In a modern age of rising persecution, distraction, and cultural compromise, the legacy of the apostles urges us to live boldly, to believe deeply, and to endure faithfully. Matthew's final moments were marked by both tragedy and triumph. As he preached a message of Christ's love, he was struck down, his blood spilling on the very altar where he had proclaimed the gospel. Though silenced by violence, his voice lived on through his writings. His gospel became a cornerstone of the Christian faith, guiding believers for centuries. Today, Matthew is remembered as the patron saint of tax collectors and accountants, a testament to how God can transform even the most unlikely individuals into instruments of his purpose. James, the son of Alphaeus, often called James the Less, was a quiet but unwavering pillar of the early church. In Jerusalem, He led the faithful through times of growing persecution. Summoned before the Sanhedrin, the same council that condemned Jesus, he was ordered to deny his faith. When he refused, he was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple. Miraculously surviving the fall, James continued to pray for his enemies until a bystander struck him down with a club. His final words were not of bitterness, but of forgiveness, embodying the very gospel he had lived and preached. In today's world, where faith is often tested, James's story reminds us that true discipleship still comes at a cost. Jude, also known as Thaddeus, partnered with Simon the Zealot in Persia, preaching a message that challenged deeply rooted traditions. As their following grew, so did the anger of religious leaders. Both were arrested for refusing to renounce Christ. Jude was beaten with a club, and Simon was executed, possibly by crucifixion or being sawn in half. Their deaths were meant to silence the gospel, but instead, they ignited a fire of faith that could not be extinguished. St. Jude, now revered as the patron saint of lost causes, offers hope to those in despair, proof that faith endures even through the darkest trials. Their relics rest today in St. Peter's Basilica, a lasting tribute to their courage. Judas Iscariot, the apostle who betrayed Jesus, walked closely with the Savior, heard his teachings, and managed the group's finances. Yet, lured by silver or perhaps crushed by disillusionment, he handed Jesus over to his enemies. His infamous kiss in Gethsemane set the path to the crucifixion in motion. Overcome with guilt, Judas tried to return the money now known as blood money. But when rejected by the priests, he took his own life. His story stands as a chilling lesson on the consequences of unchecked greed and guilt, a reminder that betrayal of truth has devastating consequences. While the New Testament gives us glimpses of the apostles' trials, many of their martyrdoms are recorded in early Christian writings, church traditions, and historical accounts. Luke's Acts of the Apostles documents the death of James, the son of Zebedee, and the hardships of Peter and Paul. Later historians like Eusebius and Roman writers, such as Tacitus, confirm the brutal persecution of Christians under emperors like Nero. Despite these horrors, the apostles' deaths did not crush the faith, they fortified it. Their courage became the foundation of a movement that would spread across continents and generations. In today's turbulent world marked by spiritual apathy, rising persecution, and moral compromise, their stories call us back to what really matters: truth, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. Their lives and deaths still speak, urging us to live with boldness, to hold fast to hope, and to never forget that real faith often requires real sacrifice. Christianity's rise from a persecuted sect to the dominant faith of the Roman Empire is one of history's most profound transformations. The very empire that once tried to crush the followers of Jesus eventually bowed to his teachings, with Emperor Constantine legalizing Christianity in 313 AD and later declaring it the state religion. Yet the heart of this global faith was not built on political power, it was built on the blood and courage of ordinary men. The apostles, fishermen, tax collectors, skeptics faced rejection, imprisonment, torture, and brutal deaths, yet they never renounced their belief. They were not clinging to a myth, they had encountered the risen Christ, and their unwavering conviction became the foundation of a movement that would reach every corner of the world. Their tombs, relics, and churches still stand today not as relics of the past, but as living reminders of what true faith costs. In a world where spiritual compromise, fear, and apathy are common, their legacy speaks louder than ever. They remind us that following Christ is not about comfort or recognition, but about sacrifice, service, and staying true to God's call even when it hurts. Their courage challenges us to stand firm in our own trials, to carry the message of hope no matter the cost. Because they remained faithful, the gospel reached emperors and outcasts alike, and it continues to guide millions today. Their lives may have ended in suffering, but their story proves that truth endures, that light overcomes darkness, and that the message of Christ cannot be silenced. In this generation, As we navigate a world filled with uncertainty and shifting values, the Apostles' example calls us to boldness, perseverance, and a faith rooted not in ease, but in eternal purpose. The story of the 12 Apostles is far more than ancient history. It is a living testament to faith, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. These were men who walked beside Jesus, witnessed his miracles firsthand, and gave everything to share his message with the world, even when it cost them their lives. Their courage transformed Christianity from a small, persecuted movement into a global faith embraced by billions today. In an age where distractions, doubt, and comfort tempt us to waver, their example reminds us that true faith calls for perseverance, commitment, and the strength to stand firm through life's greatest trials. Their legacy is not just remembered, it's alive, challenging us to live with the same purpose and passion. If their journey has stirred something in your heart, let us know by liking this video, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and subscribing for more powerful insights into biblical history. You're not alone in seeking truth, and the story doesn't end here.